One of the things, obviously, is equipment, right? We have to set ourselves up for success. In the book, you mentioned, the importance of having the right wedges. What are some like things for that in terms of cavity back versus normal
Yeah.
blade design, graphite, or same shafts for in your irons versus your wedges? I know you mentioned lie angle a little bit flatter. Take us through some of the equipment things that we need to
Right.
have, just because I feel like most people are skipping that, and it's probably making things even harder.
It's huge. I'll just go through every single thing that you should do if you want to be good and you're not sure what wedges to play. Okay, number one, you want gapping of no more than 20 yards. So if you hit your pitching wedge 130 and your next wedge goes 105, you got a problem. Okay, so typically you're looking at about 15 to 18-yard gaps max between each club. And we need to talk about probably the simplest, easiest way to get better is to know exactly how far your clubs go. And I would say most players have no idea, and I can give you a ton of examples of that. But so
Got my
know how
wedge
far they
matrix
go,
right here. Got my distance chart,
and
my wedge matrix here for you.
yeah, well, not just wedges. I'm talking every club. They
Oh
have
yeah,
no
no,
idea.
that's all of them. That's all of them. I just want to make you
Yeah.
proud.
So gapping is important. Then uh, I do like the same shaft in your wedges as you do in your irons. I do like them a tad bit heavier. But the worst thing you could do with a lob wedge is to have a one that's too upright. Okay. Uh, if you, as you fitting line for full swing, obviously you're doing it for a 5 iron, you're doing it for a 6 iron, you're doing it for a 7 iron. Well, why would you fit your lob wedge for a full swing? You don't use it for a full swing. You'd want to fit it for how it's implemented around the green in the bunker when you're hitting a little 15-yard shot over the bunker. And if that's the case, the lie angle should be flatter. And I wrote about that in that book. And that's one reason why Bob Oakey and I are friends, because he read that and he goes, "Oh, there's a guy that knows." He goes, "Yeah, your lob wedge needs to be flatter than." All right. So the next thing is that you need the highest bounce wedge that you have. And it's not just the number on the bottom, that's just a made up thing. It's the width of the sole, it's the camber, how wide is it, how far is the high point from the leading edge. We'll call that the bounce, those factors. Uh, in your sand wedge. And you want your most lofted club to have the least bounce on it, whether it's the thinnest sole, uh, the low point a little closer to the leading edge, all right, less angle. And the reason why is very simple, because if you're playing off firm turf, I got this table here, it's brick hard under there. What happens to the energy of the ball, the collision of the ball and the club when you hit it? Does the ball come out faster or slower?
Faster.
Faster, right? So more loft would be helpful, right? All right, now you got this brick hard lie. Do you want more bounce or less bounce?
Last bounce.
Yeah. So if you have a lot of bounce in your lob wedge, it's horrendous. You can't play off firm turf or super tight, right? The opposite would be true in soft sand or turf that gives way, or it's wet, it's been raining, or it's that grainy, dormant Bermuda. Or, I mean, there's a ton of the ball comes out slow. You want less loft. Lob wedge is a horrible choice in those conditions. Uh, you want more bounce, so there's more forgiveness with the turf. It digs less, so to speak. So you have a sand wedge with more bounce and less loft. You got to win there. If you got firm, you got a club. If you have soft, you have a club. And that way you don't get in a situation where, oh, I don't have a club that works with these conditions. So and then lastly, I would say you got to have fresh grooves. And I know a lot of people are thinking, well, you get yours for free, and those guys get them for free. I don't, but that doesn't matter. If you want to be good, the club you use out of the bunker, especially, you got to replace it every year, because after typically about 75 rounds, I'm not even counting practice, you lose 20% of the spin off your wedge and the launch starts to go up to a couple degrees. So you see these pros working really hard to develop this kind of low flighting spinning wedge shot. And if you got a wedge, excuse me, that's more than a year old, you got your I don't know how you're going to do it.
Hmm.
So you need a premium ball, you need sharp grooves, you need the right wedge makeup, and you don't want that gapping to be too big. And then I think, especially in your lofted club, you probably want a degree or two flatter than your normal uh, iron set.
Perfect. That is like a master class right there for equipment. I feel like most people have none of that, and I think that will help so much, like you said, just to get them in the right setup. Can you, just to clarify, you said the 1 or 2 degrees flat, is that just for lob wedge and sand wedge, or just lob wedge?
No, I play 4 wedges, so
Mhm.
my sand wedge is a degree flat, and my lob wedge is 2.
Okay.
If you played 3 wedges, you probably do it just in your most lofted one,
Perfect.
and it
And
doesn't
then,
need to be much. But
yeah.
typically, like if you have a lob wedge that's too upright and you're trying to hit a high shot, you're just going to dig the heel, and it's going to
Hmm.
the club turf interaction is going to be poor. So especially if you don't have a relief on the sole. On that lob wedge, I do like relief both on the heel and on the back of the sole. So if you're in a tileless product, the L grind or the T grind or something like that, even the M, if you need a little bit more bounce, it would be my first choice. But um, at least that way, when you lower the handle and open the face, that the heel of the club's not going to stick or catch.
I've been playing Vokey wedges since I was a sophomore in high school, so I still love my Vokeys. Always have those. I carry 4. What's your take on 3 or 4 for the everyday golfer? I know you have obviously tour pros and the best of the best you guys work with, but what would you say for the guy that's like shooting mid 80s and wanting to get into the 70s? 3 or 4 wedges.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what score you choose. It's a matter how far you hit your pitching wedge. So, for
Okay.
example, let's say uh, you hit your pitching wedge over 130 yards in the air. You need to have 4 wedges to get the gapping correct. Okay. Typically, a guy that's hitting it over 130 yards in the air, he's not, you know, casting and getting his angles out and ballooning them up in the air. They usually have pretty good uh, impact dynamics to be able to hit it that far. If you hit your pitching wedge less than that, I would say, yeah, three is enough.
Mhm.
Uh, you're might have a middle wedge at 52 and a lob wedge at 58 or something like that. And
Mhm.
if you hit, don't hit your pitching wedge over, let's say, 105 yards, then I think two's enough. You could play, pitching like the old days, a pitching wedge and a 55 or 56 degree wedge. So